ever heard about alimony in India? I mean, like, even if you're legally separated, the courts can still order one spouse to help the other out financially.
Yeah.
Super interesting stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to really get into it today with a case straight from the High Court of Orissa.
Oh.
Madan Kumar Satpathy versus Priyadarshini Pati, decided just early this month on February 7th, 2025.
And what's so interesting about this case is it's not just about, like, who has to pay who.
Right.
It really gets us thinking about, like, what are the financial expectations within a marriage, especially in India?
Absolutely. To even understand the court's decision, we've got to start with some background on Indian family law.
Yeah, for sure. So in India, they have a specific part of their criminal procedure code, section 125, that deals with, like, when you have to support your spouse financially in certain situations.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a safety net, right? Make sure that one spouse, and usually it's the wife, isn't left high and dry after a separation.
So this case is about way more than just this couple's finances.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, it really digs into the whole point of alimony, you know?
Yeah.
And how Indian law looks at things like individual responsibility and whether someone can support themselves.
Okay, well, let's get into the specifics here. Who are the people involved and what were they saying?
So we've got Madan Kumar Satpathy, he's the husband, and Priyadarshini Pati is the wife. The judgment doesn't really get into why their marriage fell apart, but it's pretty obvious things weren't good.
Gotcha.
The husband argued that he had other financial stuff going on, like supporting his mother, which made it tough to pay a lot to his wife. But the wife said she wasn't working at the moment and needed that financial help.
So kind of a financial tug of war. Did they at least agree on anything?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They both agreed that they were legally married, and there was no question about how much the husband was making.
Okay.
Court records show he was earning a net salary of $32,541 per month after taxes. That's really important because it gives the court a starting point for deciding on those maintenance payments.
That makes sense. So how did the court look at the wife's claim that she needed that financial support?
This is where it gets interesting. The court really zeroed in on the wife's background and her qualifications.
Okay.
I mean, she's a science graduate, and she's got a postgraduate diploma in journalism and mass communication.
Wow.
And she had a real track record, having worked with Grahasti Udyog, PVT, LTD, and even NDTV.
That's impressive. Doesn't really sound like someone who would have trouble finding work.
Yeah, and the court kind of seemed to agree.
Really?
They specifically said they recognized her potential to earn a living. Almost like they were saying, look, we see what you're capable of. The law isn't supposed to reward someone who chooses not to work, especially when they've got the skills and experience to support themselves.
So they were considering her potential to be self-sufficient.
Exactly.
Interesting.
They even quoted the judge, who said, law never appreciates those wives who remain idle only to saddle the liability of paying maintenance on the husband by not working or not trying to work despite having proper and high qualification.
Wow.
It's a pretty strong statement about taking personal responsibility.
It really sounds like the court was trying to send a message about how these laws are supposed to be used.
Yeah, definitely. They were making it clear that Section 125 isn't about getting a free ride. It's meant to help those who genuinely can't support themselves.
This is where I start to see the bigger picture. We're not just talking about a financial disagreement between two people. This case is touching on those societal expectations, especially about the roles women are expected to play and their financial independence in a marriage.
Yeah, you're right on the money there. This case really gives us a peek into how Indian family law sees the balance between being responsible for yourself and the obligation to support your spouse, especially when one spouse has the potential to earn. It's complicated for sure. No easy answers.
I'm so curious to know what the court finally decided. Knowing that the wife was qualified to work, did they still make the husband pay her maintenance? Knowing that the wife was qualified to work, did they still make the husband pay her maintenance?
That's where it gets a little surprising, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Even though they knew the wife could potentially work, they did order the husband to pay maintenance.
Wait, really? I thought they were kind of leaning towards her needing to support herself.
It wasn't quite that black and white.
Okay.
The court didn't totally say she didn't need any support. They did lower the amount she asked for, though.
Okay, how much was she asking for?
8,000 rupees a month.
Okay.
They brought it down to 5,000.
Oh, so they met in the middle, kind of.
Yeah.
Taking into account both the husband's money situation and the wife's potential to work too.
Right. And the judgment even says the social objective behind the provision for grant of maintenance, if considered on the admitted facts, as discussed in this case, it would go to disclose the wife's need and requirement to be balanced not only with the income and liability of the husband, but also has to be considered on the backdrop of the education and prospect of the wife to earn.
So it's like they're saying, yeah, you need help right now, but you also got to work towards taking care of yourself financially.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of shows how they're thinking about alimony a little differently.
Okay.
Moving away from the idea of permanent support and more towards what they call rehabilitative alimony.
Rehabilitative alimony. What's that? What's the difference between that and like the permanent alimony?
So permanent alimony is like ongoing support. Mm-hmm. Usually when a spouse can't support themselves at all, maybe because of age, disability, something like that.
Right.
Rehabilitative alimony is more like temporary.
Okay.
It's meant to help someone get back on their feet financially.
Okay.
It could be like getting new skills, finding a job, or even starting a business.
Yeah. So in this case, the court's saying that rehabilitative alimony would be better.
Yeah.
Give the wife some time to use those skills and become independent.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see how this affects future cases, too. It might mean Indian courts are starting to think differently about alimony, especially when one spouse has the potential to make their own money.
That's a really good point. Makes me wonder how this case would be decided in other countries.
Right.
What do you think are the most important things to consider when figuring out financial stuff after a separation?
Well, it's tough, right? Every country's got its own cultural norms and laws.
Yeah.
Some countries are all about permanent alimony, while others focus on that rehabilitative support. Some want everything split equally. Others look at who's worse off financially.
I see.
It's a lot to consider.
Yeah, definitely. But what about like beyond the laws? What about just what society expects? Do people still think the husband should be the main breadwinner, even in a case like this where the wife could clearly work?
That's such an important point. This case kind of highlights those old school gender roles and expectations, doesn't it?
It does.
Makes us ask if those ideas still make sense today. And if not, how do we change them?
It really goes beyond this one case.
Yeah.
It makes you think about equality, being financially independent, and how things are changing in relationships these days.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about looking at real life examples like this. We can learn about the legal stuff, but we also see how society shapes our views on marriage, finances, and being responsible for ourselves.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening for me. It's amazing how one court case can bring up so many important topics.
And that's what we're going for with these deep dives. They're not just summaries, We want to make you curious, make you question things, and leave you thinking about these issues long after the episode's over.
So before we wrap things up, is there a final question, something to really get our listeners thinking?
Well, this case definitely brings up some big questions about financial independence in marriage, what society expects, and gender roles.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? Where do you stand on the whole balance between personal responsibility and supporting your spouse?
That's a great question to think about. Tell us what you think. Share your experiences and what you've learned. We want to keep this conversation going. I'm really curious how this might affect future court decisions.
Yeah.
Especially as our ideas about marriage and being financially independent keep changing.
You're right. This case could change how Indian courts deal with alimony, especially when someone can clearly support themselves. It's like they're saying, hey, let's not make people financially dependent forever. Let's help people be strong and independent in their marriages.
It makes you wonder about how couples talk about money, too.
Oh, totally.
Especially like what they expect from each other.
Yeah, couples really need to be open and honest about their money goals, what they expect, and what could be tough.
Right. It shouldn't be one person's responsibility to handle everything. It should be a team effort, right?
Yeah.
Both people contributing as much as they can.
Absolutely. And that might look different for every couple, right? The important thing is to find something that works for both of them. Something that respects everyone's goals, but also makes sure they're both okay financially.
This whole deep dive has really shown me how complicated financial support can be in a marriage.
Yeah.
It's not just about the law. It's about what society expects, what we believe in, and how relationships are evolving.
You hit the nail on the head. This case really shows us how society is changing. It makes us think about gender roles, who's responsible for the money, and what a successful marriage even means.
So, as we wrap up, what's the one thing you really hope our listeners take away from this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that there's no right answer when it comes to money in a marriage. Every situation is different. So we need to approach these conversations with understanding, empathy, and a willingness to find solutions that benefit everyone involved.
I love that. It's all about balance, right?
Yeah.
Balancing individual responsibility with supporting each other.
Exactly.
And always talking, always adjusting to whatever life throws our way.
Shouldn't have said it better myself.
And hey, listeners, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on managing finances in a marriage? Share your stories and experiences. We love hearing from you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep with us.